Hello there, my name is William Nisbet, or Billy to my family and friends. I was born in Maybole on the 4th of September 1892. My dad Robert was a school teacher and my mum was Maggie Gray to her own name. They were married in Maybole in 1889. My grandfather on my dad's side was a steamship engineer until he settled in Renfrew and he sailed the ferry there. Before that he travelled the world, because my dad, my auntie and my uncle were all born in Denmark. I was named after my papa, so maybe that's where I got the urge to travel. In my 20s, I travelled backwards and forwards from Britain to Malaya, and by the age of 26 I was an assistant in a rubber estate over there. I was very successful at my job and I travelled first class wherever I went. On one of my trips home I met a girl, Margaret Dorothy Cahoon. She was a Girvan lass and the daughter of the minister of the Chalmers Church. We dated for a few years and she travelled across to Malaya in October 1925 and we got married a month later in Kuala Lumpur. On the 28th of June 1927 at Singapore, we welcomed our daughter and what was to be our only child, Helen Cahoon Nisbet. We travelled home at least once a year to see the family. My last trip back was May 1939 and we had bought a house called Arden at Turnberry. Margaret and Helen stayed there because of the imminent threat of war. She wanted to be close to her mum, who by this point was a widow, and it also felt safer leaving them there. When I got back, I signed up for the Strait Settlement Volunteer Force, service number 13884, and I was Sergeant Nisbet. There were only 1,250 men in the 1st and 2nd battalions, and we came from so many different backgrounds and nationalities, from medical staff to ministers, British to Indian, Malays to Chinese. It became compulsory for anyone aged 18 to 41 to enlist in July 1940. I was 47 by this point, but I still wanted to do my duty for my country. We trained at Changi Camp. Little did I know what atrocities would take place there over the coming years. We were mobilised to support the British forces during the Japanese invasion of Malaya and Singapore. I was in the intelligence platoon and along with 22 other men, and we were trying to gather as much information as we could to defend our country. The majority of our battalion were captured at the fall of Singapore on the 15th of February 1942. We were told of the surrender and told to stay at our posts with our weapons stacked until we'd been handed over to the Japanese. Over 97,000 British and Commonwealth troops surrendered that day. I was filled with fear. I was taken back to Changi Camp, the very place where I had trained. There were 52,000 of us there, all hungry, all weary, and disease was rife, from malaria to dysentery, and it got worse day by day. We were regularly beaten by the guards if we disobeyed orders or disrespected them, but all in all, it wasn't too bad, as we'd heard of much worse things happening elsewhere. In April 1943, I, along with hundreds of others, were transferred by train to Thailand to work on the Burma Railway. We marched over 300 kilometres and it took 15 days. We were all becoming unwell and suffering from exhaustion. Even those who were deemed fit at the start were struggling. Rainy season had started and we were only given rice to eat. Water was very scarce too. We lost so many men. Those who couldn't march were beaten and left behind. Dysentery and diarrhoea broke out and we had ulcerated feet from the marching for 12 hours a day. In May 1943, we had an outbreak of cholera which spread through the troops. The bodies were just burnt on a bonfire in the middle of the camp, or buried in mass graves. It's a sight I'll never forget. We were then distributed to several camps. I went to Songkrai camp in Kanchanaburi and I was given the POW number 37088. To reach the camp we had to cross the River Kwai on a very fragile bridge, and when we got there we found huts with no roofs, even though it was rainy season. The floor was a mud pit The dampness brought the mosquitoes. God, with them came malaria. We had no proper shelter for weeks, and many men died from pneumonia in that time. We had very little food to speak of, and were put to work straight away, working 14 hours a day as we had the task of constructing 60 kilometres of the Siam Railway, including a wooden bridge over the River Kwai. So many died in that first month or two from sheer exhaustion or disease, including me. I become the 34th man from Girvan to die in this Second World War. I die from dysentery and exhaustion on the 27th of June 1943 at 2:10 in the morning. I've seen so many horrors in the last 3 years. At least now I won't see any more. It's been said that one man died for every sleeper laid on the 258-mile route of this railway. I was initially cremated and buried at Songkrai camp, but I was later exhumed and reburied at Than Bai Yuzayat War Cemetery in Burma in the December of 1945. My death was not registered until the January of 1946. I have no idea when my wife found out that I had died. She died in 1975, and my daughter, she died in 2003, and she never married. I thought my life story had died with her, until now. I'm mentioned on my parents' headstone at Douglas Bank Cemetery in Dunfermline, and I'm also on my wife's parents' headstone at Girvan Doon Cemetery. So if you're passing by, nip in and say hello to me and my nephew, David Angus Cahoon. He was in the Scots Guards, and he died in Italy in 1945, 2 years after me. My name is not on Girvan War Memorial. My name is Billy Nisbet, and I will forever be 50 years old.